This is the Badass Dad Pod. 77% of us admit to feeling burned out in our jobs on the regular. Should we just accept that this is part and parcel for being a working person, or are there things we can do about our feelings of burnout? We're going to explore action steps to deal with burnout in this episode of the Badass Dad Pod, your podcast for getting unstuck, for leveling up relationally, physically, and financially, no matter what age you are. My name is Ryan Dunn, the money miser of Old Hickory, quester of the mighty dunk, slayer of relationship complacency. I'm a level 8 gym warrior, a level 6 relationship ranger, and a level 5 debt mage. How do you know when you're burned out? For me, I find myself uttering the phrase, I don't want to. Some people might say, I just can't, or I can't deal with this. I hate those phrases. They're phrases of defeat, but they are truly suggestive of burnout because when we feel burnt out, we are simultaneously feeling defeated. And with that, we feel tired. We're grumpy, right? We want to do something different, but we probably don't know what else we want to be doing. And that's troublesome because then we start falling into compulsive gratification habits like overeating or snacking, or extra drinks in the evening, or compulsive internet or social media surfing. I tend to shut down on people and sink into my own little world. Like I just retreat behind my own mental wall. And this often involves gaming. And honestly, this episode, I'm making it for me because that's where I've been lately. I'm totally in a phase of sulk where I find myself just wanting to push people away and indulge in games or fantasy. And that sounds fun, but it's not really healthy. Nor do I believe it's actually the most rewarding way to live. I'm going to be living my best life when I'm fostering healthy, happy relationships and engaging in the world instead of escaping from the world. So if you just want to get away too, then you might be feeling some burnout. And there are some other things I do. Now, I don't drink alcohol, but I'll over-imbibe in coffee when I'm feeling stuck. Or I'll seek out sugary snacks, and those mess me big time because I really want to shed fat and put on lean muscle physically. I probably don't need to detail how the sugar impacts that quest, but the caffeine in coffee is also problematic because lots of caffeine makes me anxious, and those anxious feelings produce cortisol in the body, and cortisol, I've learned, blocks the production of testosterone. And without testosterone, it's tough to burn fat and build muscle. And then I get feelings of being more stuck and burned out because my workouts don't seem to be accomplishing much. So we see how this snowballs, right? How feeling burned out leads to compounding feelings of frustration. So really, recognizing the steps of feeling burned out is one way to begin dealing with burnout. It's certainly not the finishing step, but it definitely is the necessary first step. What are your signs of burnout? I wonder. Are you like me and repeat the I don't want to phrase? Or do you end up retreating into yourself like I do? Or do you lean into other compulsive behaviors like consumption of harmful products? Look for those signs. When I'm there in burnout, there is one thing I look to do first. And that is, I try to give myself a win. I immediately seek to finish something. Now, I have a horrible habit of lingering in projects. Like my inventory right now is that I've got a pop-up camper that I'm restoring, that I'm almost finished, but not quite finished. And I've been training to dunk for 2 years. I'm almost finished, but not quite finished yet. And I have 3 books I'm in the middle of. I'm reading Micro Famous by Matt Johnson. I'm reading Gunfighters of the West by Bat Masterson, just a fun little escape. I'm reading a book for my work called Permission to be Black by A.D. Thomason. And then I've got projects for this podcast. I have an email list project that's almost finished, but not quite there yet. See a pattern? And I've started a new enterprise to offer training to ministers as digital content creators. I have blog posts written, but I haven't quite made the website or mailing list there yet. Not quite there. When I think about those projects as a whole, I feel stuck. I'm getting a bit anxious right now, actually, enlisting all that stuff out. And feeling stuck is burnout because we're not moving. The fix here is to give myself some kind of quick win. It's to get something crossed off of that priority list. So as I'm feeling anxious, the best thing I can do is identify what is going to be my quickest win and then make a plan and a priority to get that thing done. And that might even come at the cost of one of those other projects in the short term. For example, it might pay for me to take a half day off from work to finish, my email list or the camper project. And that sounds counterproductive, right? Because I'm taking time off work and my employer may not be pleased in the short term, but I think having a project finished is going to rejuvenate me to the point that I'll be more productive at work after having that win of completing something under my belt. I'm going to feel unstuck then. And that creates a sense of momentum and forward progress, which is all we really need to ease a sense of burnout. In many ways, burnout arises because we're unsure if what we're doing has any consequence. So the trick is to complete something, really anything, in order to show ourselves that we're progressing. All these tips for overcoming burnout, they really start to build on each other. There's something of a natural progression at work here. So the next step in our progression is to simply give ourselves fewer options. And this is related to the first step because in that step, we're winnowing down the options of things to get stressed about. And you can do that through practice, like finishing something, or you can simply make a choice of focus. In essence, we're going to make a choice to let something go. We're going to quit something. We're going to do that so we feel freed to concentrate on that which is going to bring us the most satisfaction, or in which we'll have the greatest impact. It feels funny to say this, but it might be time to quit. If you're burned out, what can you quit? Here's my recommendation. Quit that which depletes you the most. Here's a quick example of that. I sometimes get mired in reading books that I don't actually enjoy all that much. But after I've invested time in reading them, I don't want to give up. You've gotten like 2/3 of the way through the book before you realize that you don't want to be reading this book. But by the time you're that far into it, it's tough to walk away, isn't it? You've invested so much. Well, this is your invitation to give up. Yes, it sucks to waste time reading 2/3 of a book. That sucks. But it doesn't suck as bad as reading a whole book that sucks, doesn't it? And you can take that into your work life too. Do you have the agency to quit certain activities that suck you dry at work? Can you delegate something? Can you at least diminish the amount of time you spend on those activities? Most of us are not too keen on answering email, as an example. You can't quit answering email, but you can choose to only focus on email during certain blocks of time during the day. So maybe you simply take a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the afternoon to respond to email. That's it. And we're going to build on that on our next way of treating burnout. It's simply to give yourself less time to work on stuff. Now, that might sound anxiety producing to you, so hear me out on this. We all have a tendency to put off tasks that we don't enjoy, right? I know I'm not alone there. We linger on starting or completing them. So going back to our example of answering email, if we don't like to do it, then we'll put it off. The problem is that even though we're not actively engaged in answering email while we go on to do something else, our brains are still thinking about that task. They're still kind of engaged on answering email. So if we recognize an email we need to respond to early in the day, and then we just let it linger to the end of the day until we respond, you know what? Our brains have been chewing on that thing all day long. And the more they chew, the more they feel stressed. So a way to circumvent that day-long anxiety-producing chewing is to give an arbitrary deadline. And in this case, it might look like this. I'm either going to respond to that email in the window of time I have, so the half hour I have for email this morning, or I'm going to quit it and recognize that I can't do anything with it until my half-hour window in the afternoon. In a sense, we're alleviating ourselves of the feeling of ineffectualness by inaction, by choosing either deliberate action or non-action. We're asserting our control. Well, let me exemplify this another way. I've been playing around with the assumption that I only have 4 hours to work each day. So each day, I commit to getting certain necessary work tasks all done before lunch. This is freeing because I'm not spending all day ruminating on the idea that I need to do copy editing and turn in receipts. Otherwise, I would put those tasks off because they're not my favorites to do, but I'd still feel pressure of needing to get them done. That then leads to a feeling of stuckness because I have tasks I know I need to do, but I'm not progressing on them. Now, does this mean that I'm only working 4 hours each day? You betcha! No, it does not, actually. It just means I'm getting the necessary done before I eat lunch. Then the afternoons are free for more creative work projects, which actually fits really well into my own personal biorhythm. Now, speaking of biorhythms, our next step in battling burnout is to pay attention to ourselves. Particularly, pay attention to how well you're taking care of yourself. For me, the central question here is, what am I really doing to really enjoy life? If I'm feeling burned out, I want to address what I'm doing to enjoy life. And there's a big idea to note here. Enjoying life is not the same as escaping from life. There's a time and a place for escapist activities. Things like immersive gaming and binge watching. I don't want you to hear me crapping all over those activities because I enjoy them too. And there's a space in life for those. But those are activities that take us out of our lives. We want to focus on activities that bring us into enjoyment of our own lives. For me, that's like going for a run in the woods where I can really appreciate some natural beauty while appreciating the goodness of moving and breathing and sweating. Or it's doing something fun or novel with my sweetheart. We have so much fun taking little adventures together. That kind of stuff is life affirming. So have you given yourself room to do something life affirming lately? If not, that might be your burnout right there. And it's something you'll need to take charge of. Like nobody else is going to schedule life-affirming stuff for you. Nobody else is going to pay attention to your burnout. That's up to you. And that's kind of a big action item. So for the next tip in battling burnout, let's focus on something easily accessible on the daily. And it is to break up cycles of rumination. Let me explain. We often build on things in our minds. For example, my wife and I were working out the other day, and during our workout, she got an unpleasant work-related call. And I could tell that in between sets of workouts, she was turning that call over and over in her brain, alongside other negative events from the day. So this phone call became a trigger for a full-blown bad day. And one bad day on top of another leads to burnout. There's a way to trick that out and to upset the cycle of rumination that leads to a bad day. Actually, there are several, but here's one that works for me. It's to simply stop and make myself note what I'm grateful for in that very moment. So if I were my wife in that moment, I might have tripped up the cycle of rumination by noting that I was thankful to have a shared moment together, and that I was moving and sweating, and that it was a warm day. And we were experiencing the fresh air. It doesn't take much to upset that cycle. Just little things like that, honestly. I utilize this little trick when I get annoyed with my close relationships. It happens. So when I start mentally ruminating on the things that they do which annoy me, I'll try to upset that cycle of rumination by noting their traits for which I'm grateful. I'm grateful that my wife feels so deeply and is so expressive. I'm grateful that my son wants to share so much of his life with me. It's good stuff. All right, final strategy I'll share in this episode. It's a tough one, but share your vulnerability. Admit that you're feeling burned out, friend. Extra points for admitting to another human being. It's okay. Everyone gets burnt out. that does not make you less strong or less capable. It makes you human and strong enough to admit that you are human. I'll admit, often just bringing up the topic reveals a sense of release. I feel unstuck in admitting that I'm feeling stuck. There's progression in that. And you know what? Most of the time, I find that people are pretty understanding. And oftentimes, they offer to take something off my plate. And that's cool. So pick out that trusted person who you can tell, I feel a bit burnt out. You're not less of a man or less of a workout or less of a badass. You're being real, and that's awesome. You are awesome. You've not quit on this episode? Hey, while you're in a badass mood, cruise over to Facebook and join up with the Badass Dad Squad. The conversation and quest for awesome continues there. Also, while you're punching up things, punch up the subscribe button and a 5-star review. So much appreciated. We'll be back with more next week. In the meantime, keep questing after that badass quest. The journey is the point. I'm Ryan Dunn. Music is by IO Ellen. Okay, bye.